Hi, this is Kelly Leeper, and this week I'll be talking about Indianapolis Children's Museum and using focus groups for strategic planning. Focus groups seem to be very out of date these days and pretty old-fashioned in today's world of email and texting and a lot of non-FaceTime. I didn't find any classmates posting this method for their needs assessment to the resource bank, although I know Angela P. also talked about focus groups this week. I don't have any experience in the nonprofit sector conducting focus groups, but I have been involved with focus groups in the corporate sector and have found them to be very useful. And based on my research and learning more about nonprofits through this program, I do feel that it's still an effective method for getting a large amount of information, especially if it's done correctly and with a well-planned process. There are, of course, pros and cons, which we'll talk about later, but actually talking to those you serve and those who serve you and those that you hope to serve in the future, I think, yields a great deal of helpful information for the strategic planning process. In general, there's usually approximately about 10 steps for focus groups, and I'm obviously not going to take the time to go through all of these, although I do feel that defining the purpose of the focus group is especially important. You want to make sure you're eliciting the best information from really good questions. Also identifying and inviting participants that would be appropriate. In this case, I think it would be not only guests but board members and participants from a variety of the different volunteer groups that are involved with the museum, also corporate sponsors and funders and employees, and even potential future stakeholders. One of the other steps I think that's really important is generating the questions. You need to have really thoughtful questions, since you only have usually about a handful of questions that you'll be able to ask, since the time is limited. And generally, when you have a focus group, you start with questions that move from a more general perspective to more specific, and they should always be very open-ended. And then lastly, translating results into action. That's obviously probably the most important step in making sure that you're moving forward with trying to serve the organization better through strategic planning and obviously contributing to its mission. I've not had yet the opportunity to volunteer at the Children's Museum since I've just moved to the area, but I have been there probably a dozen times with my children, and these are just survey questions that I think would be helpful in trying to gather more information with regards to strategic planning purposes for the museum for the future. With regards to the strengths and limitations, there's several on both sides here, but what I think is really important to think about with regards to a children's museum is one of the great things about focus groups is that you can have children respondents. You just have to modify the questions a little bit. And they're also great for people who have English as a second language and those people with lower literacy levels. One of the biggest limitations on the flip side is that you may have so much data and from so many different types of stakeholders that it may be difficult to analyze. And here are the resources that I used for my written and for this video, and thanks for listening.